I'm a 33-year-old office worker, and my husband Tony is 5 years older. We've been married for 7 years, but currently I'm living with my mother due to some circumstances. You might wonder how I ended up in this situation. Well, let's go back a few years. Tony and I decided to build a house together. At that time, Tony had just switched jobs, and we didn't have much money saved up. His previous job at a big company was tough on him. He faced harassment from his boss, which made him lose sleep and eventually become unable to work. He tried taking a break and seeing a psychiatrist, but it didn't help much, so he had to quit. For a while, we managed on my income alone. After 2 months of being unemployed, Tony started feeling better. He ate and slept well again, and his psychiatrist was pleased with his progress. It was a relief to see him back to his old self. He started looking for a new job, but it wasn't easy because of his previous resignation due to mental health issues. Eventually, he found a job at a smaller company, although it paid less than his previous one. Still, he was happy to be working again, and it was in a field he liked. We wanted to have kids, but with the uncertainty of Tony's job situation and our financial stability, we decided to put that on hold. Then, a new challenge arose. My mother, Karen, had a traffic accident and became paralyzed, needing to use a wheelchair. Since my dad passed away when I was in middle school, Karen had been living alone in our old family home, which wasn't suitable for her condition. Tony suggested we all live together, which surprised both me and my mom, but I appreciated his kindness. Despite Tony's recent job change, we decided to apply for a mortgage to buy a house suitable for all of us. It was tough to get approved because Tony hadn't been at his new job for long. But we didn't give up. We kept trying, and eventually, after exploring different options, we succeeded in getting the loan approved. We finally decided to buy our own home. It's been a dream of mine to live in a cozy place, with wooden beams on the ceiling, custom storage, and a kitchen that fits my height perfectly. We wanted a spacious, wheelchair-friendly, single-story house, and we were excited for it to be finished. We visited the construction site often, eagerly awaiting its completion. When it was done, we were thrilled. The house even had a big yard where my mom, who's been feeling hesitant to go out since her accident, could enjoy the sun. But there was one problem. The land where we built our house was a gift from Tony's grandfather, who loved him dearly. Sadly, he got diagnosed with cancer, and he decided to divide his assets among his family. Tony got the biggest plot of land, but it was just a short walk from his family's home. When we told them my mom would be moving in with us, Tony's sister and mother weren't happy. They made hurtful comments, saying awful things about me and my mom. But Tony stood up for us, saying it was his grandfather's wish for us to have the land. Tony's family can be really mean sometimes, but Tony himself is kind-hearted. He always says he learned from their bad behavior. To me, he's like a beautiful flower growing from mud. Tony's grandfather also gave land to Tony's sister, although smaller, but it came with a parking lot that brings in good income. I would have preferred that, but I'm grateful for what we received. Thanks to Tony's grandfather, we could build our house without worrying about the land cost. It made a huge difference when getting a loan. After the house was finished, we invited Tony's family over. During construction, we found out that Tony's family had been visiting the house without our permission. They showed up late, with no apology, claiming it was kind of like their house too because of Tony's grandfather's connection. They even walked in with muddy shoes, ignoring the slippers we provided. The atmosphere was tense from the start, and they came empty-handed. They toured the rooms, and when they saw my mom's spacious room, my mother-in-law declared she wanted to live there. Then, she made insensitive comments to my mom about her accident, implying it was a stroke of luck to move from her old place to our nice house. I was furious, but before I could say anything, Tony spoke up. He called out their rude behavior, demanding an apology. Instead of apologizing, they turned on us, accusing Tony of being arrogant for standing up to them. They even insulted me, calling me a jinx. Tony didn't back down. He firmly confronted them, refusing to tolerate their disrespect. They looked frustrated, but Tony stood his ground. As the tense situation unfolded, my mother, who had been silently observing, apologized with a regretful expression. She explained that she's living with us because of an accident she had, and she genuinely appreciated Tony's kindness. Feeling guilty, Tony's mother and sister left, shooting us nasty looks. Later, my mom apologized to Tony for upsetting his family, expressing regret for the incident during the housewarming party. Tony, being the compassionate person he is, apologized back, acknowledging their lack of decency. Despite the rough start, my mom felt grateful to be living with us. 4 months passed, and we started settling into our new home. My mom began to smile more, and our neighbors, who knew Tony since childhood, were kind to us. But then, I received a call at work. Tony had collapsed at work. Rushing to the hospital, I hoped for the best. But the sight of Tony hooked up to tubes shattered me. The doctor's grim prognosis left me numb. Despite my prayers, Tony didn't make it. He passed away suddenly. In my state of shock, my mother and sister-in-law showed up, hurling accusations at me. They insinuated that I had something to do with Tony's death, calling me a jinx like my mom. I was too devastated to respond. My mom arrived distraught, and seeing her tears finally allowed me to cry too. Amidst our grief, Tony's mother declared she never wanted to see us again, blaming me for her son's death. With heavy hearts, we arranged Tony's funeral, mourning the loss of a beloved husband and son. We went to the funeral home, still in disbelief over Tony's sudden death from a subarachnoid hemorrhage. He had seemed perfectly fine that morning. When I informed my mother-in-law about the funeral schedule, she surprised me by saying she wouldn't attend because Tony always sided with us. She also mentioned her daughter wouldn't come either. At the viewing, many of Tony's colleagues and friends showed up, but neither my mother nor my sister-in-law and her husband were there. It was shocking, but it seemed to fit their character. Still, many people attended the funeral, showing how much Tony was loved. It was comforting to spend time with those who genuinely missed him. After Tony's death, I received an inappropriate email from my mother-in-law, asking about the life insurance money. I ignored it, unable to deal with such matters. When we returned home, we noticed a light on in the house, despite us turning everything off before leaving. Entering cautiously, we found my sister-in-law and her husband there, claiming they were taking over the house. They had sold our belongings and replaced them with their own, considering our things bad luck since Tony had used them. Their callousness stunned us. They even casually mentioned selling our belongings and seemed unfazed by our shock and anger. My mom and I were speechless, unable to comprehend their audacity. I called the resale company, explaining the situation, and they agreed to treat the items as stolen and return them. After this betrayal, I wanted nothing to do with Tony's family anymore. As I grappled with my emotions about staying in the house filled with memories of Tony, my mother whispered to me, asking what Tony would say. Perhaps he'd suggest we leave. He always valued spending time with those who understood us, and saw dealing with certain people as a waste of time. Realizing that Tony's family would likely continue interfering if we stayed, I impulsively leased an accessible apartment. I made a deal with my mother and sister-in-law to cut ties with us in exchange for moving out. Thus, a new chapter began with just my mother and me in the apartment. Tony had multiple life insurance policies, which now provided us financial security. He had always joked about leaving us wealthy when he passed away, and he made good on that promise. Since I had bought the house under my name due to Tony's inability to secure a mortgage, it was safe from repossession. However, when 3 months passed without paying the mortgage, I started receiving furious calls from Jessica and Linda, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. They were furious that the house was being sold, as they had been living there. They had to move out, and Linda even sold her own house due to gambling problems. Despite their pleas for money and reconciliation, I decided to cut ties with them completely. With the help of a lawyer, the house was sold without much trouble, providing us with a moment of relief. With the money Tony left us, my mother, and I plan to find a new, smaller home where we can prioritize security and start afresh. We settled on a condominium with minimal noise disturbance, ready to move forward with our lives without the chaos and toxicity of Tony's family. I remembered something Tony always said when we were building our home, that people can draw energy from the sun. With that in mind, he created a spacious courtyard for my mother-in-law to enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden without feeling self-conscious. So when looking for a new place, I searched for a condo with a large balcony where she could enjoy her coffee and her books. Although our new condo is smaller than our previous home, it still has enough space for the furniture Tony carefully chose. With the money from selling the house, I was able to buy a luxurious condominium with top-notch security, which would surely put Tony's worrying mind at ease. Meanwhile, rumors about my in-laws' situation started circulating among our old neighbors. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family were left homeless, even trying to borrow money from neighbors with no success. Eventually, they ended up in public housing but continued to face troubles due to their stubbornness. They caused disturbances in the neighborhood, like having loud arguments and even having a barbecue on their small balcony, which shocked the locals. My sister-in-law's husband had left a while ago, leaving her and Linda, my mother-in-law, to live together in a noisy environment. In contrast, my mother and I enjoyed a peaceful life in our new home. Despite both being two-member households, the neighbors rallied together to try to get my in-laws evicted due to their disruptive behavior. It's a clear example that causing trouble won't win you any favor anywhere. I just want to live peacefully and quietly, away from the embarrassment of my estranged family. I believe Tony is watching over us. So from now on, I'll live my life without causing trouble to others and strive to live not just for myself,